Hello and welcome to the Can't Read Music podcast. I'm Stu and I'm in California.
And I'm Dan and I'm in New Zealand. This podcast is going to be just us chatting about the many aspects of music production for bedroom producers. And we'll start with how we met and how we got together as a group, as a music group. And so I remember the first time we met was we were both working for the same company in London. I had started before you, and I was your buddy when you started.
My first day, I turned up, and the HR person or somebody brought me over to you and said, "This guy's gonna show you the ropes."
Yeah, and I remember you sitting with me on the computer and we going through all the systems and things, and me never really being sure of what your name was. Yep. Because I'm terrible with names. So and another part of my buddy position was to take you around and introduce you to people. So I just went around and just introduced you as Steve to everybody.
Yeah, that's not my name.
Yes, Stuart is your name.
I remember.
So for some time, you were known as Steve at that company.
It was difficult. There was a guy who sat right behind me whose name was Steven. Steve. Yeah. And there was another Steve as well. So I remember one day somebody came over and said, "Steve," and three people, including me, whose name is not Steve, had to turn around in case it was us.
I'm really sorry about that.
Yeah, sure you are.
But we've been, I would say, very good friends since then.
Yeah, that was 2011. It's 12 years ago. Yeah, I had to check my watch. 12 years.
Yes, that fancy watch. Like similar music tastes from the beginning, I think.
Yeah.
Pop punk and electronic music and all that kind of jazz, not jazz, not actually jazz, but
bad phrase for a music podcast.
All that kind of, similar music tastes. We'd worked on a few other things together, other projects, non-music related,
all sorts of
so
things.
We knew actually one of them was music related. You Sound, So that was going to be an elitist SoundCloud, basically, where to become a member, you had to be voted in. You had to submit a piece of work and then be voted in by the community members to be a part of the community. It didn't come to fruition, but
it was close. It was working.
It was close. It was working. It was really good. So we'd had similar music tastes. We'd worked together for some time. We'd hung out socially for a long time. We'd worked on projects together and things. And then fast forward all those years to, was it last year, 2022? It must have been March, I think I texted you.
Yep.
And we'd both been shooting each other links and silly things actually I should back up a little bit before that, because we'd done a little bit of music together before that.
That's true.
Yes, I always forget this.
A few times, not just that one song.
Yeah, but the most successful one we had done before that was through the
above the Metropolis.
Above through the Metropolis.
There it is.
Above the Metropolis.
Yep.
Yeah. Above the Metropolis. It's on SoundCloud, so anyone can go and listen to it. It's really good. It's really relaxing, actually. That was kind of the first song we'd done together that was all the way to release.
Yeah,
properly.
Definitely, yeah. Before that, we'd just done a lot of fiddling around in Logic when you came over to mine or I went over to yours. I think the best one, other than that, was called Spaghetti Bolognese Song.
Spaghetti Bolognese.
Just because that's what we were about to eat.
Yes, yeah, that's right. And I think it ramped up from me coming for dinner at your apartment and us just tinkering in Logic to us starting to send each other projects and clips, and then into Above the Metropolis, where we're actually did we go on any video calls for that to actually do that.
I don't think we did. I don't know how we
just fully disconnected. You did some,
maybe.
I did some.
I mean, maybe
I can't remember.
We must have collaborated at some point live.
I was sure that we were on a video call for some part of that at least. I think I can remember going through like a mixing phase and you saying, "Can we just stop and push it out now?"
Yeah, it's good enough.
Yeah. It's good enough. Yeah. So I'm sure there was a little bit of sort of more mature remote collaboration going on.
Yeah, I think I should point out at this stage that all through making all the time I've been making music, it's only been with you. I don't make it on my own. I've never been in a band. I've never written or released any music before. I can't read music.
I can't either.
But you have a lot more experience in the field than I do.
Yeah, I don't want that to sound like I'm Keith Urban, but I don't know why. I don't know where that came from, Keith Urban. But yeah, I've been in bands. So before I met you, when I was before I left school, I was in bands and I was playing the guitar for bands. I played in a school band with some friends. Then I left school and went straight into the workforce, but also joined some other new bands. First one was like a pop punk sort of. It was basically a tribute band to Blink-182. So it would do mostly Blink songs, some Green Day songs, and we had our own tracks that we wrote as well. Some of them not bad, like as punk songs go. Some of the songs we had were pretty good. And then after that, I joined another band called Cadence. And Cadence was a band that I actually had to audition to get into. And it wasn't like anything official. It was, oh, hey, I know a guitarist. This is my friend Ash, who was the drummer. I know a guitarist. He'll come in, and they were looking for a guitarist. So I went in and they were like, oh, this is a track we've got. Can you come up with some sort of guitar that goes with this? And I did, and it just happened to fit. And then, yeah, they sort of just let me join the band.
Yep.
And I was like really grateful. I was like, because I'm not a great guitarist. So I was really grateful to have a chance to just be in a band, because I did enjoy being in a band. And we played loads of gigs and we wrote loads of reasonably good tracks. And that was a really good experience, actually. The guy, Sam, who was the DJ in the band, there was like 7 of us, one of which was a DJ. There was like a bongos player, a violinist. It was nuts. He was the real sort of, I think, he was one of the sort of brains behind Cadence. Like he used to, along with Nathan, who was the singer, he used to produce all of the tracks electronically first. Then they'd sort of bring those to the band, and then we'd sort of make them a live act. Right. So I learnt so much from him, actually, Sam, about mixing, about producing, and vocals and all that kind of stuff. After Cadence kind of split up, just me, no more bands, just me on my own. So
until now,
I started making until now. Yeah, that's right. I started making dubstep songs.
slight
I
branch off
tangent. I have literally no idea why dubstep. I've never even really liked it. I genuinely think it was, that's an interesting sound. Can I replicate that sound with electronics? And that was basically it. Then after that, I started doing the space music, and working on my album Constellation, which I eventually released. It took me 5 years. I think it was 5 years. But yeah, it's early on, starting on some of those tracks like Apollo 11, and then working up to more advanced melodic tracks like Aphelion. Is that piano piece? And then straight after that, it was I Flick You a Text in March last year. Hey, do you fancy doing an 80s album? And we'd both been listening to various different 80s things. Kavinsky.
But both like 80s, original 80s music and 80s inspired modern music,
yes,
right? Like
modern music. Yeah. I've been listening to a lot of Human League and Depeche Mode, just random 80s stuff like that. Plus the modern 80s stuff like Kavinsky and some other random pieces that I found on Spotify that you'd shot me or something.
Yeah.
And that was the start of it for us, was that text and you thankfully saying yes. I could make time. Because it's not easy because we've both got kids, we've both got full-time jobs, and squeezing blocks of time out of that to produce an album is tricky.
Even in the same time zone, that would be difficult enough.
True, even in the same time zone. And with you in California, me in New Zealand, we had brief windows where we could actually get a big block of production in and writing.
Yeah, I mean, right now for me, it's Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, it's Sunday afternoon for me now.
Yeah, so there's one day of weekend where we both have a weekend at the same time that really makes it difficult.
We did manage it.
Yeah, we did a lot of weekdays too, to be honest.
We did some weekdays. And we actually managed to get quite a few, I think 6 to 8 hour stints.
Yeah.
Stints in.
Looking long into the night.
Yeah, we'd be writing. And they'd be like, you'd say to me, do you realise how long we've been on this call? The Zoom's been recording for 7 hours now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is crazy.
That's right. So that's kind of who we are, I guess. And so what we started doing since sending that text, that project became Electro FM, which is sort of I want to say band name.
Yeah.
Are we a band? Is it a music group?
Every time I talk about doing this with one of my friends, I say band and I'm like, oh, that sounds like I shouldn't be in a band. Am I in a band?
Yeah. I guess it's a band.
Yeah.
Although when I think band, I think a 3-piece.
Guitars, drums,
bass, But so Electro FM is the band, and the first project, the album, notice I said first there because we're definitely going to make more.
Yeah, let's get this one done first.
Let's get this one done.
Well, out.
The first project, out first. The first project is the death and eternal life of Brett Cassette.
I've only been working on it for 1 year and 3 months.
I know. Yeah, that's right.
You must have. I've seen you type that 1,000 times into Apple Music.
1,000 times. Yeah, that's right. The Death and Eternal Life of Brett Cassette.
Yeah. And
that title alone has so much work behind it because it's kind of a concept album, right? It's a whole story of this guy, Brett Cassette. And we will talk about, how we came up with that.
Yeah.
But essentially, it's driven by inspiration of like Black Mirror and our jobs in technology and AI and all that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty common themes, I guess, for kind of modern, like 80s inspired music.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Doom and gloom.
Yeah. All the good stuff.
Yeah. And the idea behind the story is basically that Brett Cassette is a businessman, and he may or may not have a family. We haven't decided. But he's a businessman, And he has a reasonable job and he's got a reasonable life, but he finds solace or finds escape in a virtual world. And this is kind of in a near future where you can fully immerse yourself in a virtual world, right?
Yeah.
And the virtual world is rich enough that it could, sustain you being in there for extended periods of time. And the idea is that he gets lost in this world and becomes trapped and can't find his way back.
Yeah.
That's essentially the story, right?
Yeah.
He's finding an escape from real life.
Yeah, exactly. And kind of it becomes his life, or it reaches a point where
yes,
he has to choose between one and the other.
That's right. Yeah. And that story basically, I think it was a good idea coming up with that story for the first album, because, you think, oh, I'm going to write an album, and then you think, oh, what are the tracks going to be about?
Yeah.
Is every track going to be about losing, a girlfriend, or something, or a love story of some sort? So I think it's quite nice that we came up with that whole story arc, because it really did inform the mood of all the tracks. Because we had like an idea of how the story would go across the whole album.
Mm-hmm.
It helped us, if we'd written tracks already that had a certain feel, we kind of knew where it would fall in the album. Or we could say, we need something that feels a bit like this, sad or happy, because it's at this part of the album. And then that sort of informed how we'd write.
Yeah.
And really helped with the lyrics as well.
Yeah, it's like, I've seen this phrase somewhere recently, but a soundtrack to a movie that doesn't exist. A soundtrack to an 80s movie that doesn't exist. Yeah. It's just, we have the story in our heads, and that really helped write the songs or come up with what we needed to do next. I wouldn't say it's necessarily the best way of making music in the modern era. It seems like there's a lot of emphasis these days on releasing single after single after single Singles. Every 6 weeks.
Yeah.
But that's not what we wanted to do.
No. That's something that we can talk about a bit more at length in a different episode of the podcast, because it is a really good point, and it's something I'd forgotten that we had that whole discussion about albums versus singles.
Yeah, it was a big thing. Yeah,
it was. I guess we should mention that the release date for the album is the 13th of July 2023, and it'll be out on Spotify, it'll be out on Apple Music, Amazon Music, all the usual suspects.
Yeah, YouTube.
Tencent.
Yeah.
It's on Tencent. If anyone listening / watching has Tencent, let us know.
Yeah, give it a listen. You could be our first and only Tencent listeners.
Yeah, that'd be good. Cool.
Yeah, so that covers the who we are and what we're doing.
That's right. Yeah, music inspiration for us outside of the album. I think for the Electro FM project, or for the Death and Eternal Life of Brett Cassette project, at least, it was a lot of listening to Kavinsky and Depeche Mode and Human League and Eurythmics and all that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Very synthy stuff, right? And you can hear elements of that stuff in our music.
Definitely,
yeah. And Spandau Ballet, and I think even when I was doing vocals, a little bit of Morrissey at one point. Because I've been listening to a lot of Morrissey as well.
Yeah. So a lot of those were conscious choices too. Like, I'm gonna try and sing this more like in an 80s style, or more like such and such.
That's a very good point. It was a very conscious choice to say, I want the vocals to sound like this person from this 80s band, and just trying to emulate that.
Yeah.
And I even, that one singing lesson that I had towards this, I even said to the singing teacher, this is the thing I'm going for. And she was like, oh, you need to do this with your throat, and sing like that and relax this part of your throat or something. And it worked. That was for Your Kiss.
Yeah.
And it worked. It sounded just how I thought it ought to sound. So that's good.
Yeah. You can check out Your Kiss right now. That's already released.
Yeah, we actually have 3 singles out now on all the aforementioned platforms. Your Kiss, which is the first single. We have, I think Chase was the second single. And then City Night, which is an instrumental piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of decision making about which songs would be instrumental versus what we're going to write lyrics for. That's probably a whole subject to cover.
That's right, yeah. But it's a good point that the album is a blend of tracks with vocals and tracks that are just instrumental.
Yeah, I think very early on, one of the things we wanted to do was release songs with vocals as kind of a distinguishing factor, because a lot of modern music in this style or genre or bedroom producers is purely instrumental. A lot of people, and you never see the faces of the artists or anything like that. It's very kind of impersonal.
That's right.
And
they don't feel like, I think this is a point of bedroom producer or producer in general versus a band.
Mm-hmm.
If you can see their faces, like on your profile on Spotify, and you can hear a human voice, it feels more personal. It feels more like a band.
Yeah,
you know,
definitely.
And I think that did set. I think that sets us apart. The fact that, because a lot of those tracks, like you say, are just either no vocals or a sample of some sort, and chopped up, and it's just like a repeating phrase or something.
Yeah.
So I think like written human performed vocals is quite nice.
Yeah, I do see a lot of songs in the genres that we're in, where the music is done entirely by one person, and then they collaborate with like a more established singer and do it. But that's always so and so featuring so and so. And another aspect for this whole project for us has been doing everything ourselves and not shipping something out to somebody else to do, or getting somebody to do this or that or the other thing for us. Yeah, we've done everything.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. We did consider a vocalist, and we most likely would have got way better vocals.
Yeah, maybe we should have. Is it too late?
But I don't know. It would have only felt, a third mine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas like it's all of ours. We made everything.
Yeah, and adding a third person to an already complicated thing, like what if this third person's in another time zone?
Yeah, that's right. And if they then aren't available for Zoom calls, and then it becomes an asynchronous thing of where you just send them the files and then just wait.
Yeah,
and they are either recording vocals, writing lyrics, or they've got other life stuff going on and you've no idea.
Yeah, and it's happening in a vacuum, and it's not a lot like, I guess in a way we're sort of emulating band practice by doing it together on Zoom, or not at all, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and a lot of exactly that. That's a great point, because a lot of what we were doing when we were writing was I'd maybe play a riff or something, and you'd be like, no, on the second time round, lower the last note, or that third note, can that be upper semitone or whatever. But all of that's live.
Mm-hmm.
It's live, and it's like, and I can immediately go and play the next iteration of it,
right? And
then and it works much faster. It's much more of a fun process because it's more collaborative. You're bouncing ideas off each other, and
that instant feedback, I think, can't really be beaten or overlooked, because if you send me audio that you've written and I've listened to it, and I think, oh, it might be nice if it goes up at the end, and then I send you a text that says that, and then you're like, well, in your head, it's done. You've finished it. You've sent it to me, and now I'm like,
That's
go
right.
back, open that whole project up again,
Yeah.
change it, and then send it back to me. Like, that's the feedback. The cycle is too slow. It's got to be instant.
Way too slow. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think that was one of my favorite things about the project, actually, was instant feedback.
Yeah.
And just like bouncing off each other. It's the whole point. It's the whole point of, like, I did Constellation on my own.
Mm-hmm.
It was nowhere near as fun. Nowhere near as fun as having done it with you, for this album.
Yeah.
Because you've got a friend there, you're having a laugh while you're doing it, and you're bouncing ideas off each other and things that I'd never have thought of, you've thought of, and it was so much more fun.
Yeah, definitely.
And,
it's not to say that doing it any other way is wrong or not the right way, and our way is the right way, but this is what we wanted or how it worked for us, exactly.
Yeah. I think the whole point of the thing at the beginning was to do something together, do something fun together.
I wouldn't have been too surprised if we didn't release anything.
yeah. I would have been just as happy, and have had just the same amount of fun had we built all these tracks and not just pushed that extra step to release it.
That extra step is a light way of.
It's a light way of saying it. Yeah,
there's a lot of finishing the tracks. We did that when, like, other than the mixing and mastering, the actual writing of the music was done a long time ago. The lyrics took a little longer. The mixing and mastering took forever.
Even longer. Yeah, we can go into that in a bit more depth as well.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of information about who we are and what we're doing. We do have a lot more topics to cover about general music production, with, flavors of what we've done remotely and for the album. Some of the topics would be things like, submitting to playlist curators, things like how do you create all the content that you need for social media? How do you drum up interest for releases? Things like our production process, our personal production processes, and things like mixing and mastering, and lots more topics as well to come. Yeah.
All right, that's it for this episode. If you have questions, comments, suggestions for future episodes, go to can'treadmusic.com and submit them there. I've been Stu.
I've been Dan. See you next time.
Bye.